The fluorescent lights in the accounting department hummed with their usual monotonous drone, a sound I'd grown so accustomed to that silence would have been alarming. My fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced precision, entering numbers that represented millions in transactions for Drago Enterprises. Each keystroke was measured, deliberate. The same way I'd conducted myself for the past 3 years in this glass tower that scraped the Chicago skyline. I paused to massage my temple, feeling the familiar throb that had been building for weeks. The headaches were getting worse, but I pushed through. Dad needed me to keep this job. The pay at Drago Enterprises was triple what I could make anywhere else with just an accounting degree, and with his garage barely breaking even, we couldn't afford for me to take sick days. Mercer, the quarterly reports. A folder landed on my desk with unnecessary force. I looked up to find Marcus Chen, the department supervisor, hovering over my cubicle. His expression carried that particular blend of professional distance and barely concealed interest that I'd learned to navigate since my first day here. But Marcus was nothing compared to the real challenge of working at Drago Enterprises. "I'll have them reconciled within the hour," I replied, keeping my voice neutral and my eyes on the folder rather than meeting his gaze. "Good, Mr. Drago wants everything perfect for tomorrow's board meeting." Marcus leaned against my cubicle wall, trying for casual. "Speaking of Mr. Drago, he asked about you again yesterday. Wanted to know if you were settling in well with the new responsibilities." My hand stilled on the keyboard. 3 years, and Alessio Drago's interest hadn't waned. If anything, it had intensified since my promotion 6 months ago. What started as occasional glimpses of him in the elevator had evolved into coincidental meetings in the break room, invitations to exclusive company events that somehow always placed me at his table, and gifts that appeared on my desk, expensive coffee blends, ergonomic desk accessories, even tickets to concerts I'd mentioned liking in passing conversation with colleagues. "That's considerate of him," I said, returning to my typing. "Please tell him I'm managing fine." Marcus snorted softly. "You're probably the only woman in this building who'd call the boss's personal attention just considerate." I finally looked up, meeting his eyes directly. "I'm here to work, Marcus. Nothing more." He straightened, getting the message. "Right. 1 hour for those reports." As he walked away, I allowed myself a moment to close my eyes. The throbbing in my head had spread to the base of my skull. I reached into my drawer for the bottle of aspirin I'd been going through at an alarming rate, dry swallowing 2 pills. My phone buzzed. "Dad." "Hey, princess. Just checking in. You eating lunch today?" His voice, roughened by years of cigarettes he'd quit too late, and the Chicago wind that howled through his garage instantly eased some of my tension. "Yes, Dad. I packed the leftover pasta from last night." "Good. You're looking too thin and pale. Maybe you should take some time off, see a doctor about those headaches." "I'm fine," I lied smoothly. "Just the usual end-of-quarter stress. How's the garage?" I heard him sigh. "Mrs. Patterson's transmission gave out completely. Going to cost more than the car's worth to fix. But you know I can't charge her full price. Not when her husband just passed." This was Dad, Daniel Mercer, the man who'd raised me alone since Mom died when I was 8, who'd taught me that integrity mattered more than profit, that you helped people because it was right, not because it was profitable. His garage had limped along for 20 years on that philosophy, keeping half the neighborhood's cars running on payment plans that were more suggestion than contract. "We'll figure it out, Dad. We always do." "Because of you, Princess. That job of yours is what keeps us afloat. I just wish—" He paused. "I wish your mother could see the woman you've become." The emotion in his voice made my eyes burn. "She knows, Dad. Somehow she knows." After we hung up, I forced myself to focus on the reports. The numbers swam slightly, and I blinked hard to clear my vision. Just stress, just lack of sleep, just the weight of being 23 and responsible for more than I should be. The afternoon crawled by. The headache had become a living thing, pulsing with each heartbeat. By 3 o'clock, I was gripping the edge of my desk to keep the room from spinning. The water bottle on my desk seemed impossibly far away. "Elisa, you look terrible." Meredith from the next cubicle peered at me with concern. She was one of the few colleagues I'd allowed past my professional barriers, a 40-something woman who reminded me of what my mother might have been like. "Just a headache," I managed, though my voice sounded strange to my own ears. "That's not just a headache, honey. You're white as a sheet." I tried to stand, to prove I was fine, but the world tilted violently. My knees buckled, and I heard Meredith's sharp cry of alarm as the industrial gray carpet rushed up to meet me. The impact never came. Strong arms caught me, and I found myself looking up into familiar amber eyes that belonged in boardrooms and magazine covers, not inches from my face. Alessio Drago. "Call an ambulance," he ordered, his voice cutting through the gathering crowd of concerned colleagues. "Now." "I'm fine," I protested weakly, trying to pull away from his hold. The movement sent another wave of dizziness through me. "I just need a moment. You need a hospital." His tone brooked no argument. One arm supported my back while his other hand pressed against my forehead. "You're burning up. How long have you been feeling ill?" I couldn't answer. The question required thinking, and thinking hurt. Everything hurt. The fluorescent lights had become stabbing needles, and each sound was amplified to an unbearable degree. "Weeks," Meredith supplied when I remained silent. "She's had headaches for weeks. I told her to see a doctor, but she said she couldn't afford to miss work." Something dark flashed across Alessio's face. At 35, he was the youngest CEO in Drago Enterprises' history, having inherited the company from his father, along with its less legitimate operations that everyone knew about, but no one discussed. He wore power like other men wore cologne, subtly but unmistakably. "The ambulance is 3 minutes out." Marcus appeared, phone in hand, his earlier casual demeanor replaced by genuine concern. "I'll ride with her," Alessio announced. "No," I forced out. "Please, just let them take me. I don't need—" "What you need," he interrupted, his voice gentler than I'd ever heard it, "is to stop being so stubbornly independent for once and accept help." The irony wasn't lost on me. For 3 years, I'd rejected every overture, every invitation, every gift that came with strings I could see, even if he never explicitly attached them. I'd watched other women in the company accept his attention, watched them rise quickly through the ranks, only to leave just as suddenly when they realized that Alessio Drago's interest came with expectations that went far beyond professional excellence. "My father," I whispered, a new panic cutting through the pain. "Someone needs to tell my father." "I'll handle it," Meredith promised, squeezing my hand. "You just focus on getting better." The EMTs arrived in a blur of Navy uniforms and medical jargon. As they lifted me onto the stretcher, I caught sight of my desk, the meticulous files, the color-coded calendar, the small framed photo of Dad and me at my college graduation. Everything orderly, controlled, safe. "I'm coming with her," Alessio told the EMTs, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. "Are you family?" one of them asked. "I'm her employer," he replied, already pulling out his phone. "And I'm calling ahead to ensure she gets the best care possible." As they wheeled me toward the elevator, I wanted to protest again, to insist I was fine, that I didn't need his help, that I could handle this on my own like I handled everything else. But my body had betrayed me completely. The strong, independent woman who'd spent 3 years keeping Alessio Drago at arm's length was reduced to a shivering form on a stretcher, dependent on the very man she'd been so careful to keep at a professional distance. The last thing I heard before consciousness slipped away was Alessio's voice, sharp with command. "I don't care what it costs. Run every test. Find out what's wrong with her." Even through the haze of pain and medication, I understood the danger in those words. Alessio Drago had finally found a vulnerability in my carefully constructed walls. And men like him, men who built empires on identifying and exploiting weaknesses, never failed to press their advantage. But as darkness closed in, all I could think about was my father. Sweet, kind Daniel Mercer, who would blame himself for not noticing I was sick, who would mortgage his garage if that's what it took to pay for whatever was wrong with me. I'd protected him from so much. From knowing why Mom really died, from the bills that came marked final notice, from the reality of how close we'd come to losing everything more than once. I'd been the strong one, the responsible one, the one who handled things. Now, as the ambulance sirens wailed through Chicago traffic, I realized with crystalline clarity that I couldn't protect anyone anymore, not even myself. The first thing I became aware of was the antiseptic smell, that unmistakable blend of disinfectant and industrial cleaning supplies that could only mean hospital. The second was the soft beeping of machines, a rhythmic electronic heartbeat that seemed to sync with the throbbing in my head. But the third thing, the thing that made my eyes snap open despite the harsh fluorescent lighting, was the sound of my father's voice. Mortgage the garage. I don't care. Whatever she needs, she gets it. Dad? My voice came out as a croak, throat dry as sandpaper. Princess. His work-roughened hands enveloped mine instantly. Thank God. You've been out for 2 days. 2 days, Elisa. I thought... His voice broke. I'd never seen my father cry. Not when Mom died, not when the garage nearly went under, not even when I'd graduated college, the first Mercer to do so. But now, tears tracked down his weathered face, catching in the stubble he hadn't bothered to shave. I'm okay, I whispered, though we both knew it was a lie. People who were okay didn't collapse at work and wake up 2 days later in hospital beds. Mr. Mercer, I need to speak with you about Elisa's condition. A woman in a white coat stood at the foot of my bed, her expression carefully neutral in that way doctors perfected when delivering difficult news. I'm Dr. Sarah Chen. She introduced herself to me. How are you feeling? Like my head might explode, I answered honestly. What's wrong with me? She glanced at my father, then back to me. The MRI showed a significant abnormality. You have a rare condition called arteriovenous malformation, AVM. It's a tangle of abnormal blood vessels in your brain that's been causing your symptoms. The words didn't make sense. They were just sounds, medical terminology that belonged in textbooks, not in my life. But I'm 23. I'm healthy. I eat right. I don't smoke. AVMs are typically congenital, Dr. Chen interrupted gently. You were born with it. The fact that it's only now causing symptoms is actually fortunate. Many people don't discover them until they rupture. Rupture. The word hung in the air like a blade. What's the treatment? Dad asked, his hand tightening around mine. Dr. Chen's pause told us everything. The AVM is in a delicate location. Surgery is possible, but it would need to be performed by a specialist. Dr. Harrison at Northwestern is one of the few neurosurgeons in the country with experience in this particular procedure. Then we'll get Dr. Harrison, Dad said firmly. Dad, the procedure is experimental, Dr. Chen continued. Insurance classifies it as elective because there are alternative treatments, though they're far less effective. The surgery alone would cost approximately $300,000. With the extended hospital stay and rehabilitation, you're looking at close to $500,000. The number hit like a physical blow. $500,000. Dad's garage made maybe $40,000 in a good year. My salary was decent, but after rent and helping Dad with his bills, I had maybe $5,000 in savings. We'll figure it out, Dad said, but his voice had lost its certainty. There has to be a way. Payment plans or... I've already spoken with our financial department, Dr. Chen said softly. They can offer a payment plan, but they require 20% down. That's $60,000 before we can even schedule the surgery. I closed my eyes, feeling tears slip down my cheeks. Not from pain, but from the crushing weight of impossibility. I could see the next months, years unfolding. Dad selling the garage, both of us drowning in debt. My condition worsening while we scrambled for money we'd never have. "How long do I have?" I asked quietly. "Without treatment, it's difficult to say. The AVM could remain stable for years, or it could rupture tomorrow. The increased symptoms suggest it's growing, which means the risk increases daily." After Dr. Chen left, Dad and I sat in silence. The hospital sounds continued around us, carts rolling down hallways, muted conversations, the ever-present beeping of machines monitoring vitals we couldn't afford to protect. "I'll sell the garage," Dad said finally. "No." The word came out harsher than I intended. "Dad, no. That garage is your life. It's all we have left of Mom." She'd helped him paint the sign the year before she died, her careful script spelling out, "Mercer's Honest Auto," in deep blue paint. "You're my life," he said fiercely. "The garage is just a building. A building that might bring in 100,000 if we're lucky. That's not even half of what we need. Then I'll get a loan, rob a bank. I don't care, Elisa. I'm not losing you too." A knock interrupted us. I expected a nurse, maybe Dr. Chen returning with more impossible news. Instead, Alessio Drago walked in, and the spacious hospital room suddenly felt cramped. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than a month of my medical care, but it was his expression that struck me. Genuine concern, mixed with something I couldn't quite identify. In his hands was a bouquet of white orchids, elegant and expensive, completely out of place in the utilitarian hospital setting. "Ms. Mercer," he said, then noticed my father. "You must be Daniel. I'm Alessio Drago, Elisa's employer." Dad stood, automatically wiping his palm on his jeans before shaking Alessio's hand. "Mr. Drago, Elisa's mentioned you. Thank you for making sure she got here safely." "Of course." Alessio set the orchids on the bedside table, his movements careful and deliberate. "How are you feeling, Elisa?" "Like I've been diagnosed with a ticking time bomb in my brain," I said flatly. There was no point in maintaining professional courtesy when I was lying in a hospital gown, IVs in my arm, my life measured in dollar signs we didn't have. "I heard," he said simply. "Dr. Chen briefed me on your condition." "She had no right—" I asked, he interrupted. "As your employer, I needed to understand the situation. Drago Enterprises has excellent health insurance, but I understand it doesn't cover experimental procedures." "We'll manage," Dad said quickly. Too quickly. "Family takes care of family." Alessio's amber eyes studied my father with an intensity that made me nervous. "Indeed they do. Mr. Mercer, might I speak with you privately?" "No," I said immediately. "Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of me." "Elisa." His voice carried a note of gentle reproach. "Please, just a few minutes." Dad looked at me, uncertain. I wanted to refuse, to demand they stay where I could hear them, but the medication was making me drowsy, and the fight was draining out of me. 5 minutes, I conceded. They stepped into the hallway, but through the glass panel in the door, I could see them talking. Dad's expression shifted from wary to shocked to something that looked dangerously like hope. Alessio handed him something, a card or paper, and Dad's shoulders sagged as if a weight had been lifted. When they returned, Dad looked dazed. "What did you do?" I demanded, looking between them. "Mr. Drago has offered to help," Dad said slowly, as if he couldn't quite believe the words. "No." The refusal was automatic. Whatever he offered, no. "Princess, Dad, could you give us a moment?" Alessio asked politely. "I don't think—" "It's okay, Dad," I said, though it wasn't. Nothing about this was okay. Just give us a minute. Reluctantly, Dad left. Alessio took his abandoned chair, pulling it closer to my bed. This close, I could smell his cologne. Something subtle and undoubtedly expensive, with notes of sandalwood and amber. "You're going to refuse," he said. It wasn't a question. Of course I'm going to refuse. I know what kind of help men like you offer, Mr. Drago. I've managed to avoid it for 3 years. I'm not about to accept it now just because you'll die without it. His voice was calm, but there was an edge underneath. Your pride is worth more than your life. My integrity is, I shot back. I've seen what happens to women who accept your help. They get promotions they didn't earn, jewelry they didn't ask for, and expectations they can't refuse. You think I'm trying to buy you? He leaned back, studying me with those unnerving amber eyes. That I've been, what? Playing a long game for 3 years, waiting for you to be desperate enough to accept? Aren't you? He was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. Do you know why I noticed you, Elisa? Not your appearance, though you're undeniably beautiful. Not your work, though it's impeccable. It was your first week. You corrected an error in a report that had been through 6 levels of review. A small error, but one that would have cost us significantly. You stayed 3 hours past your shift to fix it, and you never mentioned it to anyone. I only knew because I reviewed the security footage. That was my job. No, he corrected. Your job was to process the reports as given. Integrity made you fix it. Humility kept you from seeking credit. He leaned forward again. For 3 years, I've watched you navigate every situation with grace and principle. You return gifts, decline invitations, maintain boundaries despite considerable pressure. Do you have any idea how rare that is in my world? Then you should understand why I can't accept this. What I understand, he said, his voice hardening, is that you're going to die for your principles, and your father is going to watch it happen. I sat with him for 2 days, Elisa. 2 days while you were unconscious, watching him age years with every hour. He told me about your mother. Cancer, wasn't it? He watched her fade away while bills piled up and treatments failed. Are you really going to make him go through that again? The words hit like physical blows. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. You're 23 years old with a time bomb in your brain and a father who would sell his soul to save you. I'm offering a solution. At what cost? I whispered. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. The afternoon sun cast his profile in sharp relief. The strong jaw, the perfect posture, the controlled energy that marked him as a predator, even in repose. I've already paid for the surgery, he said quietly. The deposit went through an hour ago. Dr. Harrison has been contacted. You're scheduled for next Thursday. The room spun, and not from my condition. You had no right. I had every right. He turned back to me, and for the first time, I saw emotion crack through his controlled facade. You work for me. You collapsed in my building. Your father signed the papers allowing me to handle the medical decisions while you were unconscious. This isn't handling medical decisions, this is... I struggled for words. This is manipulation, control. This is saving your life, he countered. The money is already spent, Elisa. The surgery is scheduled. The only question is whether you'll take it. And if I do? My voice was barely a whisper. What then? What do you expect in return? He moved back to the chair, but didn't sit. Instead, he leaned down, one hand braced on the bed rail, bringing his face close to mine. This close, I could see flecks of gold in his amber eyes, could count the faint lines that suggested he smiled more than his reputation implied. What I expect, he said softly, is for you to live. To continue being the principled, infuriating woman who returns every gift and refuses every invitation. To keep being the only person in my entire organization who looks at me without calculation or fear. I don't believe you. I don't expect you to. He straightened. But consider this. If I wanted to own you, Elisa, would I have waited 3 years? Would I have accepted every rejection, every returned gift, every polite refusal? I could have made your life difficult. I could have transferred you, demoted you, found a dozen ways to pressure you. Instead, I've watched you thrive, promoted you based on merit alone, and respected every boundary you set. The truth of his words was undeniable, which only made this more confusing. Then why? Because somewhere along the way, your rejections became more valuable than anyone else's acceptance. He laughed, but it was bitter. Do you have any idea how pathetic that is? Alessio Drago, who can have anything, anyone, reduced to cherishing the fact that one woman won't have dinner with him. So this is, what? A grand gesture to finally win me over. This is me ensuring you live long enough to keep rejecting me, he said simply. Take the surgery, Elisa. Fight me afterward if you must. Hate me if it helps. But live. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. Your father has my direct number. If you need anything at all, he'll contact me. Alessio. His name on my lips stopped him. It was the first time I'd used it, and we both knew it. I can't owe you this. You understand that, right? I can't owe you my life. You already owe me nothing, he said without turning. The money is gone whether you take the surgery or not. I'm not a man who makes returnable investments. After he left, I stared at the ceiling, trying to process what had just happened. $500,000. He'd spent $500,000 on me without blinking, without demanding anything in return. Or so he claimed. Dad returned, looking hopeful and terrified in equal measure. He paid for it, I said unnecessarily. All of it. I know, Princess. I tried to refuse, but he said. Dad sat heavily. He said you'd already given his company 10 times that in value through your work, that it was a business investment. I laughed, but it came out cracked. A business investment in brain surgery. Elisa. Dad took my hand again. I know you're proud. God knows where you got it from. Well, probably from me. But this isn't the time for pride. This is life or death. It's more complicated than that, Dad. No, he said firmly. It's not. You're my daughter. You're 23 years old. You have your whole life ahead of you. If someone wants to help, for whatever reason, we take that help. We say thank you, and we take it. And when he comes collecting, Dad's face hardened in a way I rarely saw. Then he'll deal with me, but I don't think he will, Princess. That man. When you were unconscious, he sat in that hallway for hours. Just sat there, waiting for news. That's not the behavior of someone looking to collect on a debt. Maybe that's exactly what it is, I murmured, but my protest lacked conviction. The truth was, I was tired. Tired of fighting, tired of being strong, tired of pretending the pain wasn't getting worse every day. And underneath the exhaustion was fear, real, bone-deep terror at the thought of dying at 23, of leaving my father alone, of all the things I'd never get to do. I'll take the surgery, I said finally, but I'm paying him back, every penny. Dad smiled sadly. Of course you will, Princess. Of course you will. But we both knew the truth. How did you pay back someone for your life? How did you balance that ledger? And more importantly, when the bill came due, because with men like Alessio Drago, it always did, What currency would he demand? The night before surgery, I couldn't sleep. The hospital room had become familiar over the past week. The way the shadows fell across the ceiling at different hours. The pattern of footsteps in the hallway. The rhythm of night shift changes. At 3 a.m., I gave up pretending and reached for my phone. There were messages from colleagues, from Meredith especially, wishing me well. Nothing from Alessio, since that day he'd announced he'd paid for everything. His absence should have been a relief. Instead, it left me unsettled, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Can't sleep either. Dad's voice came from the chair he'd refused to leave despite my protests. He'd been there every night, catching fragments of rest between my vital checks and his own worried vigilance. "Did you know Mom was going to die?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "Those last weeks, did you know?" He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Yeah, Princess, I knew." The doctors tried to prepare me, but how do you prepare for losing half your soul? Were you angry? At God? At the world? At her for leaving? All of the above, he admitted. But mostly I was grateful. For the time we had. For you. For getting to love her at all. Even knowing how it would end, I wouldn't change a single day. I'm scared, Dad. I know. He moved to sit on the edge of my bed, taking my hand. But you're stronger than you know. You get that from her. That steel spine of yours. She'd be so proud of who you've become. A woman too proud to accept help when she's dying? A woman with principles, he corrected. Though maybe you could bend them just a little. For my sake. We sat in comfortable silence until the pre-dawn light began creeping through the windows. At 6, the surgical team arrived to prep me. Dr. Harrison himself came to explain the procedure one final time, his calm confidence helping ease the knot in my stomach. "The AVM is in a challenging location," he said, marking on a model brain. "But I've done 17 similar procedures. The success rate is excellent. You're young, healthy, and we caught it before a rupture. All favorable factors." "And the risks?" I asked, needing to hear them again. Any brain surgery carries risks. Infection, bleeding, stroke. There's a small chance of cognitive or motor impairment. But the risk of doing nothing far outweighs the surgical risks. I nodded, signing the final consent forms with hands that only trembled slightly. As they wheeled me toward the OR, Dad walked alongside, holding my hand until the last possible moment. "I love you, Princess," he said, kissing my forehead. "I'll be right here when you wake up." "Love you too, Dad." The anesthesia took hold gently, pulling me under like a warm tide. My last coherent thought was absurd. I wondered if Alessio knew the surgery was today, if he was somewhere in his glass tower thinking about the employee whose life he'd bought. Waking was a gradual process. First came awareness of breathing, of the ventilator that had been removed but left my throat raw. Then sounds, beeping machines, distant voices, someone saying my name. Finally, sight, blurry and unfocused, but enough to make out shapes. There she is. Dr. Harrison's face swam into view. "Welcome back, Elisa. The surgery went perfectly." I tried to speak, managed only a croak. Someone pressed ice chips to my lips, and I recognized Dad's calloused fingers. "Don't try to talk yet," Dr. Harrison continued. "You'll be groggy for a while. Everything went exactly as planned. The AVM has been completely removed. Once you heal, you'll be good as new. Better, actually." The next days blurred together. Pain medication made everything soft around the edges, but I was aware enough to catalog my body's responses. I could move all my limbs. I could speak once my throat healed. My vision cleared. Each small victory felt monumental. What I wasn't prepared for were the flowers. They started arriving the day after surgery. Not ostentatious bouquets, but elegant arrangements that somehow didn't overwhelm the hospital room. White orchids, pale roses, lilies that perfumed the air without being cloying. No cards, but I knew who sent them. "Your boss has good taste," the nurse commented on day 3, arranging the latest delivery. "Most men just grab whatever's in the hospital gift shop." Dad said nothing, but I caught him studying the flowers with an expression I couldn't read. On day 5, Meredith visited. She hugged me carefully, tears streaming down her face. "You scared us all to death. The whole department's been asking about you." "How's work?" I asked, desperate for normalcy. "Chaos without you. Marcus is pulling his hair out trying to manage the quarterly reports. Turns out you're irreplaceable." She paused. "Mr. Drago asks about you every day. Has Marcus give him updates?" "Does he?" It wasn't a question. Meredith studied me with the perception that made her such a good friend. "You know, when you collapsed, I've never seen him move so fast. One second he was in a board meeting, the next he was catching you before you hit the ground. Security footage showed he practically flew down 2 flights of stairs." "He was in a board meeting?" "With the Japanese investors, the ones he'd been courting for months. He left them sitting there." She leaned closer. "Elisa, what's really going on? The whole company's buzzing with rumors." "There's nothing going on," I said firmly. "He helped an employee in crisis, that's all." Her expression said she didn't believe me, but she let it drop. I was released after 10 days with a list of restrictions that made me feel ancient. No driving for 6 weeks. No lifting anything over 5 pounds. No strenuous activity. Regular follow-ups with Dr. Harrison. Physical therapy to regain full coordination. Dad had prepared the house meticulously. He'd rearranged furniture to create clear paths, installed grab bars in the bathroom, even bought a shower chair I insisted I didn't need. My childhood bedroom waited, exactly as I'd left it 3 years ago, when I'd moved to my own apartment. "Just temporarily," he said, catching my expression. "Until you're steadier on your feet." The first week home was harder than the hospital. There, I'd been a patient. Here, I was forced to confront how much I'd lost. My hands shook when I tried to write. Walking to the bathroom exhausted me. The simple act of showering required planning and rest afterward. "It's normal," the visiting nurse assured me. "Brain surgery is trauma, even successful surgery. Be patient with yourself." Patience had never been my strong suit. The flowers continued arriving at the house. Dad had given someone the address, though he wouldn't admit it. Every 3 days, something new appeared. Nothing overwhelming, just quiet reminders that someone was thinking of me. On day 12 of recovery, I was attempting to read when Dad knocked. "You have a visitor." "If it's Meredith, tell her I'm sleeping. I can't handle more office gossip." "It's not Meredith." Something in his tone made me look up. "Dad, you didn't." "I didn't do anything, but the man did save your life, Princess. Least you can do is say thank you." Before I could protest, Alessio appeared in my doorway. He looked different outside the hospital and office, more casual in dark jeans and a simple black sweater that probably cost more than our mortgage. His amber eyes took in everything quickly. My pale complexion, the slight tremor in my hands, the way I instinctively pulled the blanket higher. "Hello, Elisa." "Mr. Drago." I kept my voice formal despite the intimacy of him being in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by remnants of who I'd been. Academic achievement awards, faded band posters, photos of happier times. "Alessio," he corrected gently. "I think we're past formalities." I don't recall agreeing to that. A smile ghosted across his face. "No, you wouldn't. May I sit?" I nodded toward the ancient desk chair, the one that creaked if you leaned back too far. He sat carefully, somehow making even that broken-down piece of furniture look elegant. "How are you feeling?" he asked. Like someone opened my skull and rearranged things, which I suppose is exactly what happened. Dr. Harrison says the surgery was textbook perfect. No complications, no residual damage. "You've been checking up on me." "I've been checking on my investment," he said, then caught himself. "I apologize. That was poorly phrased, but accurate." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, suddenly intense. "What would you have me say, Elisa? That I don't care what happens to you? That I spent $500,000 on a whim? That watching you collapse meant nothing to me?" "I'd have you explain why," I said quietly. "The real reason. Not the deflections about my work value or your appreciation for my integrity. Why did you do this?" He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze moving to the window where Dad's garage was visible across the yard. When he spoke, his voice was different, rougher, less controlled. "My sister died when she was 25, brain aneurysm. She'd been having headaches for months, but she was stubborn, independent, refused to see a doctor because she didn't want to worry anyone or miss work." His hands clenched and unclenched rhythmically. "By the time she collapsed, it was too late. The damage was irreversible. Alessio. She was brilliant," he continued as if I hadn't spoken. "Not just intelligent, but truly good in a way that's rare in my world. She looked at me like I could be better than what I was, made me want to try." He laughed bitterly. "I failed, of course, but she never stopped believing I could change." "I'm not your sister," I said gently. "No," he agreed, finally meeting my eyes. "But you're the first person since her who's looked at me without seeing dollar signs or power to exploit. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" "So you saved me because I remind you of her?" "I saved you because the thought of you dying was unbearable." The words hung between us, too honest for comfort. "I saved you because for 3 years, the highlight of my day has been catching glimpses of you being unimpressed by me. I saved you because somewhere between your first rejection and your 100th, I fell completely, irrevocably in love with you." My heart stuttered, then raced. "You don't love me. You love the idea of me, the one woman who won't fall at your feet. Is that what you think?" He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. "That this is about ego? About conquest? Isn't it?" He turned back, and the look in his eyes made my breath catch. "I know your coffee order. Medium vanilla latte with an extra shot, but you always ask for regular coffee in meetings because you think the fancy drinks make you look high maintenance. I know you call your father every day at lunch, that you eat the same turkey sandwich every Tuesday and Thursday, that you hum Fleetwood Mac when you think no one's listening. Surveillance?" I asked weakly. "Observation," he corrected. "I know you volunteer at the literacy center on Saturdays, that you're teaching yourself Italian through a phone app, that you write poetry in the margins of financial reports when you're stressed." "How?" "Because I pay attention to you, Elisa. Not as an acquisition or a challenge, but as a woman who fascinates me. You think I'm playing some elaborate game, but the truth is simpler and more pathetic. I'm desperately in love with someone who can barely stand to be in the same room with me. That's not—" I stopped, unsure how to finish. Not true? But it had been, for 3 years. Not fair? But what about any of this was fair? "I should go," he said, apparently taking my silence as answer enough. "I just wanted to see for myself that you were recovering. Despite what you think, I expect nothing in return for the surgery. Your life isn't a debt to be repaid." He moved toward the door, and something in me, maybe the part still soft from surgery and pain medication, maybe the part that had heard the raw truth in his voice, couldn't let him leave like this. "The flowers are beautiful," I said softly. "Thank you." He paused, his back to me. "You knew they were from me." Subtle isn't exactly your strong suit, Alessio. White orchids? You sent them to my desk every month for a year before I made you stop. You kept one, he said without turning. Pressed it in the book of poetry you keep in your bottom drawer. Heat flooded my cheeks. You had no right to go through my desk. I didn't. You left the book open on your desk once when you rushed to help Meredith with something. I was dropping off reports and saw it. He finally turned, a small smile playing at his lips. Elizabeth Barrett Browning. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. It's a beautiful poem, I said defensively. Yes, he agreed. It is. We stared at each other across my childhood bedroom, 3 years of careful distance suddenly feeling both too much and not enough. I was acutely aware of how I must look. Pale, thin, surgical scar hidden beneath careful bandaging. Nothing like the polished professional he saw at the office. I'm not her, I said finally. Your sister. I can't be her replacement. I'm not asking you to be. I'm asking you to be yourself. To maybe, eventually, consider that I might be more than the sum of my worst parts. Are you? More, I mean? He moved back into the room, returning to the creaky chair. I don't know, he admitted, but I'd like to find out. With you, if you'd let me. I can't. I gestured vaguely at myself, at the situation. I can't owe you this and date you. It's too much like I bought you? His voice hardened. Is that really what you think? Isn't it what everyone will think? The CEO who paid for his secretary's surgery and suddenly she's grateful enough to... Stop. The command in his voice silenced me. First, you're not my secretary. You're a senior analyst whose work has saved my company millions. Second, what anyone thinks is irrelevant. Third, and most importantly, I'm not asking you to date me. You just said... I said I'd like to find out who I could be with you. That's not the same as demanding you have dinner with me tomorrow. He leaned back, and the chair creaked ominously. What I'm asking for is simpler. Stop running. Stop assuming you know my motives. Stop believing that accepting help makes you weak or obligated. And in return? There is no in return, Elisa. That's what you can't seem to understand. My feelings for you exist independent of your response to them. I don't need you to love me back. I don't even need you to like me. I just need you to be alive and in the world, being exactly who you are. The words should have felt like pressure, like emotional manipulation. Instead, they felt like release. For 3 years, I'd built walls against what I assumed were his expectations. But what if there were no expectations? What if I'd been fighting a battle that existed only in my mind? I don't know how to do this, I admitted. I don't know how to accept help without feeling indebted. I don't know how to let someone care for me without waiting for the bill to come due. Then learn, he said simply. Take your time. Heal. Come back to work when you're ready. And maybe, if you're feeling adventurous, have coffee with me sometime. Just coffee. No strings, no expectations, no debt to repay. You spent $500,000 on my brain surgery, and you want to have coffee? I want you alive and healthy. Coffee would be a bonus. Despite everything, I found myself almost smiling. You're very strange, you know that? I've been told. He stood, and this time I knew he was really leaving. Rest, Elisa. Get better. Everything else can wait. At the door, he turned back one last time. For what it's worth, you've never owed me anything. Not for the surgery, not for the flowers, not for caring about you. The only person keeping score is you. After he left, I lay back against my pillows, mind racing despite the fatigue. Dad appeared in the doorway, obviously having listened to everything. Seems like a good man, he said carefully. He's a dangerous man, I corrected. Most good men are when it comes to protecting what they care about. He sat on the edge of my bed. Your mother turned me down 17 times before she agreed to one date. 17? I counted. He smiled at the memory. She said I was too rough around the edges, too poor, too everything she didn't want. But I kept showing up, not pushing, just being there. Finally, she agreed to coffee. Just coffee, she said. No expectations. And coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into dancing. Dancing turned into 40 years of the best life I could have imagined. He patted my hand. Sometimes, princess, the biggest risk is playing it safe. I thought about that long after he left. About walls built from good intentions. About debts that existed only in our minds. About men who showed love through action rather than words. About the terrifying possibility that accepting care didn't mean accepting control. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Then I realized it wasn't unknown. Alessio had texted once before, the night I collapsed, asking Marcus for updates. There's a cafe on Madison that makes an excellent vanilla latte, when you're ready. A. I stared at the message for a long time. Then, with fingers that shook only slightly, I typed back. When I can walk without wobbling. E. His response came immediately. I'm excellent at catching people who fall. This time, I did smile. It was small and tentative, but it was real. Maybe that was enough for now. Maybe everything else really could wait. Through my window, I could see Dad in his garage, working on Mrs. Patterson's car. He'd refused her money again, I knew, just as he always did when times were tough for others. We were alike in that way, too proud to accept help, too stubborn to admit we needed it. But I'd accepted Alessio's help, however reluctantly, and the world hadn't ended. I wasn't owned or obligated or diminished. I was simply alive, with a scar on my skull and a chance at tomorrow. Maybe that was the first step. Maybe learning to accept care without suspicion was its own form of strength. Maybe, just maybe, not every gift came with strings attached. The poetry book lay on my nightstand where I'd left it before the hospital. I opened it to the marked page, where a pressed white orchid lay nestled between Browning's words about love and counting. I'd kept it. Despite every returned gift and rejected invitation, I'd kept this one small token. Perhaps I'd known even then what I was only beginning to understand now, that sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't letting someone in. Sometimes it's keeping them out. 6 weeks. That's how long Dr. Harrison had said before I could return to work. In reality, it took 8 before I felt steady enough to navigate the L, to trust my hands with the detailed financial reports that were my bread and butter. 8 weeks of physical therapy, of Dad hovering with barely concealed anxiety, of slowly reclaiming pieces of myself. The morning I returned to Drago Enterprises, Chicago had dressed itself in spring finery. April sunshine bounced off the glass towers, and the air held that particular freshness that made winter feel like a bad dream. I stood outside the building, tilting my face toward the warmth, gathering courage. You sure you're ready for this, princess? Dad had asked over breakfast, watching me push eggs around my plate. No, I'd answered honestly. But I can't hide forever. Now, smoothing my navy dress, carefully chosen to project competence and professionalism, I entered through the familiar revolving doors. The security guard's face lit up. Ms. Mercer, good to have you back. We've missed you around here. Thank you, Thomas. I smiled, touched that he remembered my name after 2 months. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt both eternal and too quick. When the doors opened, I found the accounting department decorated with welcome back banners and balloons. My colleagues applauded, and Meredith rushed forward to hug me. Thank God, she said. Marcus has been an absolute bear without you. We're drowning in backlogged reports. Marcus himself appeared, trying to look stern but failing to hide his relief. Your desk is exactly as you left it. Try not to collapse again. The temp they sent was useless. I'll do my best, I promised, touched despite his gruff delivery. My desk was indeed unchanged, except for the stack of cards and small gifts from colleagues. And there, in the center, a single white orchid in a simple glass vase. No card, but I knew. I settled into my chair, running my fingers over familiar surfaces. The computer hummed to life, and muscle memory took over. Within minutes, I was immersed in spreadsheets and calculations, the ordered world of numbers welcoming me back like an old friend. Knock, knock. Meredith appeared with coffee, regular, not my preferred vanilla latte. Thought you could use this. How does it feel? Like coming home, I admitted, accepting the mug gratefully. He asks about you, she said quietly. Every day for 8 weeks. Marcus is sick of giving updates. Meredith, I'm not saying anything, just observing. She glanced around, then leaned closer. He also hasn't dated anyone since you've been gone. That actress, Vivian? She's been calling the office, trying to get his attention. He won't even take her calls. That's not my business, isn't it? She studied me with those perceptive eyes. Elisa, I've worked here 12 years. I've seen Alessio Drago with dozens of women. The way he looks at you, that's different. Before I could respond, Marcus called her away to deal with some crisis. I turned back to my computer, determined to focus on work and nothing else. For 3 hours I succeeded. The familiar rhythm of analysis and calculation soothed something in me that had felt fractured since the surgery. Then my phone buzzed with an internal message. Conference room 3, A. My hand stilled on the keyboard. I could ignore it. Claim I hadn't seen it. But that would be cowardice, and whatever else I wasn't a coward. Conference room 3 was one of the smaller meeting spaces, with glass walls that provided an illusion of privacy, while keeping everything visible to the department. Professional. Appropriate. Safe. Alessio was standing by the windows when I entered, hands in his pockets, looking out at the city below. He turned at the sound of the door, and something flickered across his face. Relief, maybe, or simple pleasure at seeing me upright and functional. You look well, he said. I am well, thank you. I stayed near the door, maintaining distance. Was there something you needed to discuss? How's your father? The question surprised me. He's fine. Business has actually picked up. Apparently, word got around that he wouldn't take payment from Mrs. Patterson, and now half the neighborhood wants him to work on their cars. Good people recognize other good people. He moved away from the window but didn't approach me. And you? How are you, really? I'm fine. The headaches are gone. My coordination is back to normal. Dr. Harrison is pleased with the recovery. That's not what I meant. I knew it wasn't, but I wasn't ready for whatever deeper conversation he wanted. Mr. Drago. Alessio, I conceded. I appreciate everything you've done, more than I can express, but I need to maintain professional boundaries. It's the only way I can work here. Because you still think you owe me. Because I do owe you. $500,000 to be specific. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. We've been over this. The debt doesn't exist. To you, maybe. To me, it's very real. I pulled a folder from behind my back where I'd been hiding it. I've drawn up a payment plan. It's modest, based on my current salary. But if you'll agree to a reasonable interest rate. No. I can increase the monthly payments once I... No, Elisa. His voice carried that quiet authority that could silence boardrooms. I won't take your money. Then I can't take your coffee. The words came out more forcefully than intended. He went very still. Is that what this is about? You'll punish us both indefinitely because you can't accept that sometimes people help without expecting payment? People don't spend $500,000 without expecting something. I do. He moved closer, still maintaining appropriate distance but close enough that I could see the frustration in his amber eyes. I spend that much on art I'll never look at, on charity galas I don't attend, on investments that might never pay off. The difference is, none of those things matter to me the way you do. You can't buy me. I'm not trying to buy you. I'm trying to save you. You already did. From the AVM, yes, but not from this. He gestured between us. This wall you've built. This ledger you're keeping where every kindness must be repaid. Every gesture must have a price. That's not living, Elisa. That's just survival. The words hit too close to home. I should get back to work. The quarterly reports can wait 5 minutes. He moved to the conference table, pulling out a chair and sitting. After a moment's hesitation, I did the same, maintaining several seats between us. Tell me something. If Meredith had paid for your surgery, would you be avoiding her? That's different. Why? Because she's not... I stopped, flustered. Not what? Not in love with you? His smile was self-deprecating. Neither am I, apparently. You've made that impossible. I haven't made anything impossible. You're the one who saved your life, who wants to have coffee with you, who's been waiting 8 weeks just to see you healthy again. He leaned back in his chair. Guilty on all counts. What a monster I am. Despite everything, I almost smiled. You're impossible. I've been told. Usually by you. We sat in silence for a moment. Through the glass walls, I could see colleagues pretending not to watch us. The gossip mill would be churning overtime by lunch. I can't date you, I said finally. I haven't asked you to. You asked me for coffee. Which is a beverage, not a binding contract. He stood, apparently deciding to end this circular conversation. The offer stands whenever you're ready. No strings, no expectations, no carefully hidden invoices. Just 2 people drinking overpriced coffee and perhaps talking about something other than debt and obligation. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're back. The department runs better with you here. Marcus might actually smile again. A Marcus doesn't smile. He did once. I think it was 2018. This time I did smile, couldn't help it. Alessio caught it, and his whole face softened in response. There she is, he said quietly. The woman who pressed an orchid in a poetry book. I was starting to think the surgery had removed her entirely. How did you know about... Never mind. I shook my head. You notice too much. Only about things that matter. He left then, and I sat alone in the conference room trying to sort through my tangled emotions. Outside, Chicago went about its business, indifferent to the small dramas playing out in glass towers. But inside, something had shifted. The wall I'd mentioned wasn't gone, but maybe, it had developed a small crack. I returned to my desk to find Marcus hovering with an armload of files. Good talk? He asked with studied casualness. Were you all watching? Of course not. He dumped the files on my desk. We were working diligently and happened to occasionally glance at the conference room where our CEO was meeting with the woman he spent $500,000. Marcus. Right. Working diligently. He paused. He's different, you know, since you. Better. Less. Terrifying? I was going to say isolated, but terrifying works. He straightened. These are the Mitchell accounts. They're a mess. Fix them, and try not to give the boss any more heart attacks. He's insufferable when he's worried. The rest of the day passed in a blur of numbers and normalcy. I fell back into routines, grateful for work that demanded focus and offered concrete solutions. But Alessio's words echoed. That's not living, Elisa. That's just survival. Was he right? Had I become so focused on maintaining independence that I'd forgotten how to accept kindness? The surgery had saved my life, but what kind of life was it if I spent it calculating debts that only I acknowledged? That evening, I stood at the window of my childhood bedroom, looking out at Dad's garage. He was still there, bent over an engine, doing work he loved for people who needed help. He didn't keep a ledger of kindnesses. Neither had Mom. They just helped because it was right. My phone sat on the nightstand. Alessio's message still unanswered from weeks ago. There's a cafe on Madison that makes an excellent vanilla latte. When you're ready. Was ready a destination or a decision? Could you wait for courage, or did you have to choose it? I picked up the phone, then set it down. Picked it up again. 8 weeks of physical therapy had taught me that healing wasn't linear. Some days were harder than others. Some exercises that seemed impossible became routine with practice. Maybe emotional risks were similar. Maybe the only way to learn to accept care was to practice, one small step at a time. I typed quickly before I could change my mind. Saturday, 2 p.m., just coffee. The response came within minutes. Just coffee, though they also make excellent scones. Don't push your luck. Wouldn't dream of it. See you Saturday, Elisa. I set the phone aside and prepared for bed, my mind already spinning with potential disasters. What if it was awkward? What if he expected more than coffee? What if the entire coffee shop saw us and assumed? But beneath the anxiety was something else. A flutter of anticipation, perhaps. Or maybe just the novel sensation of choosing something beyond mere survival. Saturday was 4 days away. 4 days to panic, reconsider, and possibly flee the state. Or 4 days to practice believing that sometimes an orchid was just an orchid, surgery was just healing, and coffee was just coffee. The poetry book lay where I'd left it, Browning's words patient between its pages. I touched the pressed orchid gently, remembering the day I'd saved it. I'd told myself it was because I didn't believe in waste, that even rejected gifts deserved preservation. But maybe that was just another form of keeping score. Maybe I'd kept it for the same reason I was agreeing to coffee, because somewhere beneath the fear and pride and careful independence, I wanted to believe that accepting care didn't diminish who I was. Maybe it enhanced it. 4 days. I could survive 4 days. And then perhaps, I could try something harder than survival. I could try living. Saturday arrived wrapped in unexpected rain. I stood in front of my meager closet in my studio apartment. I'd finally moved back 3 days ago despite Dad's protests, second-guessing every choice. Jeans seemed too casual. A dress felt like I was trying too hard. After 20 minutes of indecision, I settled on black slacks and a soft green sweater that Meredith had said brought out my eyes. "It's just coffee," I told my reflection. The woman in the mirror looked skeptical. The cafe on Madison was exactly what I'd expected from Alessio. Understated elegance that whispered rather than shouted its expense. Through the rain-streaked windows, I could see warm lighting and scattered patrons, the kind of place where privacy was valued and discretion came standard. He was already there, seated at a corner table where he could see the door. The moment I entered, he stood, a gesture so automatic it was clearly ingrained rather than performed. He wore dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that made his amber eyes seem almost gold in the soft lighting. "You came," he said, and the genuine surprise in his voice caught me off guard. "I said I would. You've said many things over the years. Following through with coffee is a first. Don't make me regret it," I warned, but without real heat. He pulled out my chair, and I sat, trying not to notice how the simple courtesy made something flutter in my chest. A server appeared immediately. Of course they did. And Alessio ordered his black coffee while I requested my vanilla latte. "No scone?" he asked when the server left. I said just coffee. "So you did." He leaned back, studying me with those unsettling eyes. "How was the move back to your apartment?" I blinked, surprised. How did you— Never mind. Of course you know. Your father mentioned it when I called to check on him. You've been calling my father? Once a week. He's been teaching me about carburetors. At my shocked expression, he smiled. What? I grew up with drivers. I never learned basic car maintenance. Your father is rectifying that gap in my education. My father is teaching you, Alessio Drago, about cars. Last week we covered oil changes. Apparently I've been grossly overpaying for basic maintenance. The image of Alessio in his expensive clothes, learning oil changes in Dad's garage, was so incongruous I almost laughed. Why? Because he's important to you, he said simply. And because he's a good man who tells terrible jokes and shares stories about you that you'd probably prefer I didn't hear. Oh God, what stories? The high school science fair comes up frequently. Apparently you built a better mousetrap that actually caught the judge's toupee. This time I did laugh, surprising us both. It was an accident. The spring mechanism was too sensitive. Your father was very proud, still is. Our drinks arrived, and I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic, inhaling the vanilla-scented steam. For a moment, we sat in comfortable silence, the rain pattering against windows, the soft murmur of other conversations creating a cocoon of normalcy. This is nice, I admitted. Don't sound so surprised. I can do normal. Since when? Since you agreed to coffee. I've been practicing. I even took the L here instead of having Anthony drive me. You took public transportation? Green Line to Madison. A woman gave me her seat. I think she thought I was lost. He sipped his coffee. I was, briefly. The map app doesn't account for construction. The image of Alessio Drago, confused on the L, accepting seats from concerned strangers, was endearing in ways I wasn't prepared for. Your security must have loved that. His expression shifted slightly. I didn't bring security. Alessio, this isn't a business meeting, Elisa. It's coffee. Normal people don't bring armed guards to coffee. Normal people aren't— I lowered my voice, glancing around. You know what you are, what you're involved in. Yes, he said quietly. I do. But today, I'm just a man having coffee with a woman who makes him want to ride public transportation and learn about carburetors. The vulnerability in his voice made my carefully constructed walls tremble. You can't just separate those parts of yourself. Can't I? You do it every day. The woman who reconciles million-dollar accounts, the daughter who helps in her father's garage, the volunteer who teaches adults to read. You separate those parts constantly. That's different, is it? Because from where I'm sitting, we're both just trying to be more than the labels others assign us. I set down my mug, needing the distance. The difference is my labels don't include— I stopped, unsure how to continue without saying too much in public. Don't include what? The family business I inherited? The choices that were made for me before I could walk? The world I was born into without consultation? His voice remained calm, but intensity burned beneath. You think I chose this life, Elisa? You could walk away. Could I? He leaned forward. My father built an empire on blood and concrete. My name is carved into foundations I never laid. I have 300 employees in the legitimate businesses alone. If I walk away, who takes over? Someone worse? Someone who won't protect the neighborhoods under our umbrella? Someone who sees people as commodities rather than responsibilities? So you're what? A benevolent dictator? I'm a man trying to transform poison into medicine. Every year, I move more money into legitimate channels. Every year, I refuse proposals my father would have jumped at. Every year, I disappoint the old guard who remember when the Drago name meant unquestioned brutality. And the things you can't transform, the violence that still exists, diminish with each passing month. But Rome wasn't built in a day, and it can't be demolished in one either. Change too fast, show too much weakness, and the wolves circle. The very people under our protection become prey for worse predators. I'd never heard him speak so openly about his world. In the office, it was all legitimate business and careful phrases. Here, with rain on windows and coffee growing cold, he was offering truth. Why are you telling me this? Because you asked me for coffee. Because for 3 years you've seen me as a monster in an expensive suit. Because I want you to understand that the man who paid for your surgery and the man who inherited an empire of questionable morality are the same person, trying desperately to be worthy of a woman who keeps pressed orchids in poetry books. I don't need you to be worthy of me. No, he agreed, but I need it. I need to be someone you can drink coffee with without calculating debts, someone your father can teach about cars without fear, someone who can love you without it feeling like a trap. There it was, love, the word that had haunted every interaction since my surgery. You can't love someone you don't really know, I said quietly. Then let me know you, and more importantly, know me. Not the CEO, not the heir to questionable enterprises, just me, Alessio, who takes the L badly and learns oil changes slowly and has been counting the days until you agreed to coffee. 93, I said without thinking. His eyes widened slightly. You counted? Heat flooded my cheeks. I'm an analyst. I notice patterns. What other patterns have you noticed? The question felt like a test, or maybe an invitation. I studied him, really looked for the first time without the filter of fear or obligation. He had a small scar near his left eyebrow I'd never noticed before. His hands, wrapped around his coffee mug, showed surprising calluses for someone who worked behind a desk. When he was truly listening, he tilted his head slightly to the right. You wear your father's watch, I said finally. Even though it doesn't match your suits, you drink too much coffee and not enough water. You have a tell when board meetings bore you. You click your pen exactly 3 times. When you're genuinely happy about something, the left corner of your mouth twitches before you smile. And you've been different since your sister died. Lonelier. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise melting into something softer. You see quite a lot from your analyst desk. Occupational hazard. Or maybe you've been watching me as much as I've been watching you. The truth of it sat between us, undeniable. I had been watching, noticing, filing away details I told myself were just professional awareness but were actually something deeper. This scares me, I admitted. Good. It terrifies me. He reached across the table, not taking my hand but laying his palm up between us. An offer, not a demand. But maybe that's okay. Maybe the best things are supposed to be scary. I stared at his hand, at the lifeline that curved strong and unbroken across his palm. One touch. Such a simple thing that felt momentous. 3 years of careful distance could end with one voluntary touch. My phone buzzed, shattering the moment. Dad's ringtone. I'm sorry, I need to... Take it, Alessio said, withdrawing his hand. It could be important. Princess, you busy? Dad's voice was strained in a way that immediately set off alarms. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong exactly. But there's a situation at the garage. Some men showed up saying I owe protection money. Never had trouble with that before, but they're being pretty insistent. Ice flooded my veins. Are you safe? For now. They gave me until tonight to come up with $5,000. Said this was just the beginning, that the neighborhood's under new management. I was already standing, Alessio rising with me. Call the police, Dad. You know that won't help, Princess. Not with these types. I'm on my way. Elisa, no. I don't want you near... On my way, I repeated, ending the call. What is it? Alessio's voice had shifted, all warmth replaced by sharp attention. My father. Someone's trying to extort protection money from him. I was already heading for the door, Alessio beside me. I need to go. I'm coming with you. No, this isn't your problem. He caught my arm gently as we reached the street. Your father is being threatened. That makes it my problem. Because everything I care about becomes your responsibility? The words came out sharper than intended. Because I care about you, he corrected, and because this shouldn't be happening. Your father's neighborhood is under Drago protection. No one should be demanding money. Under your protection? A legacy arrangement from my father's time. We don't collect anymore, haven't in years, but we ensure no one JR continue else does either. If someone's moving in. His expression darkened. I need to make calls. We stood on the rain-slicked sidewalk, the afternoon's gentle peace shattered. This was the reality I'd been trying to avoid, the moment when Alessio's two worlds collided with mine. Let me handle this, he said quietly. Please. He's my father. And you're... He stopped, jaw tightening. You're important to me, both of you. Let me help. Like you helped with the surgery? No. His voice was firm. This isn't charity or manipulation. This is someone violating agreements that have stood for 20 years. This is my business, Elisa. The kind I'm actually good at. I wanted to refuse, to handle it myself somehow. But what could I do against men who demanded protection money? Call the police who wouldn't care? Negotiate with money I didn't have? If you handle this, I said slowly, I don't want violence. I can't promise that. Alessio, I can promise to try. I can promise that your father will be safe. But I can't promise that men who threaten innocent people will walk away unscathed. He touched my face gently, rain droplets clinging to his fingers. This is who I am, Elisa. The man who drinks coffee and learns about cars. Yes. But also the man who protects what matters. And I matter? More than you know. I closed my eyes, feeling the last of my carefully maintained distance crumble. Okay, but I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. My father. My choice. I met his gaze steadily. You want me to know you? This is part of knowing you, seeing how you handle your world when it crashes into mine. He studied me for a long moment. You're very stubborn. You're just noticing this now? Despite everything, he smiled. No. It's one of the first things I loved about you. He pulled out his phone. Anthony, I need you at Madison and 5th. Immediately. And call Marcus and Luca. We have a situation. The warmth of the coffee shop felt like a different lifetime as we waited for his car. The man beside me was shifting, transforming from the vulnerable person sharing coffee to someone harder, more dangerous. But his hand found mine in the rain, and I realized with startling clarity that both versions were real. Both were him. And despite every rational objection, despite the danger and complications and impossible mathematics of our worlds, I was beginning to understand that both versions were becoming essential to me. The black car appeared through the rain like a shadow gaining substance. Anthony emerged with an umbrella, his expression professionally blank, but his eyes alert. As we slid into the back seat, I caught him glancing at our joined hands in the rearview mirror. The Mercer garage on Ashland, Alessio instructed. Then into his phone. Marcus, we have unauthorized collection in the Ashland district. Yes, I'm certain. Find out who's behind it. I want names within the hour. I listened to him work, watched the transformation complete itself. This was the Alessio Drago of boardrooms and backrooms, the man whose name carried weight in shadows. But his thumb traced gentle circles on my hand, and I realized I wasn't seeing a mask drop. I was seeing all of him for the first time. It'll be okay, he murmured, covering the phone briefly. I promise. I wanted to believe him. But as Chicago blurred past the windows and we raced toward whatever waited at my father's garage, I understood that okay was a relative term. Nothing about our worlds colliding could be simple, but his hand in mine felt like an anchor, and maybe, that was enough for now. The scene at Dad's garage made my blood run cold. 3 men stood in the bay, their casual positions belied by the baseball bat one carried and the crowbar another twisted between his hands. Dad sat on his workbench, oil-stained hands carefully still, the kind of stillness that came from not wanting to provoke predators. "Stay in the car," Alessio ordered as Anthony pulled up. "Like hell." He caught my arm as I reached for the door. "Elisa, please, let me handle this first. That's my father. And these are my people to deal with. Give me 5 minutes. If it goes badly, Anthony will get you both out." His eyes were hard as flint. "Promise me." The command in his voice brooked no argument, but this was my father. 3 minutes. 5. 4. Or I'm going in now. Despite everything, his mouth quirked. Still negotiating everything. He pressed his lips to my forehead briefly. 4 minutes. He exited the car with a fluidity that reminded me he was more than boardrooms and spreadsheets. Anthony stayed put, but I saw his hand move to his jacket, a gesture I didn't want to analyze too closely. Through the rain-streaked windshield, I watched Alessio approach the garage. The moment the 3 men saw him, their entire demeanor shifted. The bat lowered. The crowbar stilled. One of them, the apparent leader, actually took a step back. "Mr. Drago," I heard him say, the garage's acoustics carrying his suddenly nervous voice. "We didn't know. This wasn't..." Didn't know what? Alessio's voice was conversational, which somehow made it more terrifying. That this neighborhood has been under Drago protection for 20 years, that Daniel Mercer is a friend of the family, or that you're currently committing suicide by stupidity. "We were told the old arrangements were void," the leader stammered. "That new management was taking over the territory. Were you?" Alessio moved closer, and all 3 men shifted uncomfortably. "And who told you this fairy tale?" "Victorino. He said the Dragos had gone soft, that you were too focused on legitimate business to care about the neighborhoods anymore." Even from the car, I could see Alessio's expression darken. "Torino is moving on my territory?" He said, I don't care what he said. The conversational tone vanished. "You have 10 seconds to leave. If I see any of you in this neighborhood again, if I hear you've so much as looked at Mr. Mercer's garage, I'll take it very personally. And despite what Torino told you, I haven't gone that soft." They scrambled to leave, abandoning their weapons in their haste. The leader paused at the entrance. "Mr. Drago, we didn't know. Torino said..." "Tell Torino I'll be seeing him soon. Tell him the Ashland district remains under my protection. Tell him if he wants to test how soft I've become, I'm happy to provide a demonstration." They fled, and I was out of the car before my 4 minutes were up. Dad saw me coming and stood, opening his arms just in time to catch me. "Princess, what are you doing here? Are you okay?" I pulled back to examine him. "Did they hurt you?" "I'm fine. They were all talk until..." His gaze moved to Alessio, who stood apart, making another call. "That your boss?" "It's complicated." Dad studied me with those eyes that had seen through every childhood lie. "Is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks pretty simple. Man cares about you, you care about him. He just ran off 3 thugs without throwing a punch." "Dad..." "I know who he is, Elisa. What he is. Hard not to in this neighborhood. The Drago name has meant protection here since before you were born." He glanced at Alessio again. "Though I'll admit, I expected someone older. Scarier. He can be scary. To them, maybe. Not to you." Dad's weathered hand cupped my cheek. "Never to you. I saw his face when he looked at you in that car." Before I could respond, Alessio approached. The hardness from moments before had softened, replaced by genuine concern. "Mr. Mercer, are you all right?" "Thanks to you." Dad extended his hand, and Alessio shook it without hesitation. "Though I'm curious why the neighborhood protection extends to broken-down garages. It extends to good people," Alessio replied simply. "Besides, you're teaching me about carburetors. Can't have someone interrupting my education." Dad smiled, actually smiled at the man I'd spent 3 years avoiding. "Speaking of which, that '67 Camaro you asked about, found one. Needs work, but the bones are good." "Dad, maybe not the time for classic car talk," I interjected. "Why not?" Alessio asked. "The immediate threat is handled. Might as well discuss something pleasant while my people deal with the larger issue." "Larger issue?" I looked between them. "Someone's making a play for territory that's been stable for decades." Alessio's expression darkened briefly. "It'll be handled, but it means the protection your father's neighborhood has enjoyed needs to be more visible for a while." "Visible how?" Dad asked. "A couple of my men will be around. Nothing intrusive, just enough presence to discourage further attempts." He looked at Dad directly. "Unless you object." "To protection from idiots with baseball bats? Not hardly." Dad glanced at me. "Though I suspect my daughter has opinions." I did, many opinions, about territory and protection, about violence and control, about the careful distance I'd maintained crumbling in the space of an afternoon. But Dad was safe, and the men who'd threatened him were gone, and Alessio had handled it without the brutality I'd feared. "I need air," I said, instead of voicing any of those opinions. I walked out of the garage into the rain that had softened to a drizzle. The neighborhood looked exactly as it always had. Row houses with tiny front yards, corner bodegas, kids' bicycles chained to porches. But now I knew it existed under an umbrella of protection I'd never recognized, a shadow economy of safety I'd benefited from without knowledge. "You're upset." Alessio had followed me, of course. "I'm processing." "What specifically?" I turned to face him. "That my entire life has been adjacent to your world without my knowing. That my father's garage has been under your protection. That men with baseball bats run from your name. Does it change things?" "Everything. Nothing." I laughed, but it came out shaky. "I don't know. This morning I was having coffee with a man who couldn't navigate the L. Now I'm standing in my childhood neighborhood realizing it's part of your empire." "Not empire," he corrected quietly. "Legacy. One I'm trying to transform, remember?" "Into what?" He moved closer, and I didn't step back. "Something worthy of you. Of this." His gesture encompassed not just us, but the garage where Dad was puttering around, giving us privacy. "Something that protects without poisoning." That's a pretty dream. It's a goal. Dreams are passive. Goals require action. And Torino? What action does he require? Alessio's expression shifted, showing the steel beneath. "He'll be reminded why certain boundaries exist. No violence if it can be avoided. That was your request. But men like Torino only understand strength. And if violence can't be avoided, then it'll be precise, controlled, and final." He touched my face, rain damp and gentle. "This is who I am, Elisa. I can promise to minimize harm, to seek resolution through negotiation first. But I can't promise to be something I'm not. I'm not asking you to be. Aren't you?" The question hung between us. Was I? For 3 years, I'd rejected him because of what he represented. Now, faced with the reality of his world protecting mine, the lines blurred. "I don't know what I'm asking," I admitted. "This morning, coffee felt like a huge step. Now Now you've seen behind the curtain." His hand dropped. "And you're wondering if you can accept what's there. Are you wondering if I can?" "No." His certainty surprised me. "I know you can. You're the strongest person I've ever met. The question is whether you'll choose to." "Because you've already chosen?" "I chose 3 years ago. Every rejected invitation, every returned gift, every time you looked through me like I was furniture. I chose you." He smiled wryly. "Though I'll admit, I hoped it would take less than 3 years for coffee." Despite everything, I found myself almost smiling. "You're very persistent." Another thing we have in common. We stood in the drizzle, the weight of the afternoon's revelations settling around us. Behind us, I could hear Dad whistling, off-key as always, as he worked. The neighborhood continued its Saturday routine, unaware of the drama that had unfolded and resolved in the space of an hour. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now?" "Several things. My men establish a visible presence to prevent further incidents. I have a conversation with Torino about boundaries. Your father continues teaching me about cars without interruption." He paused. "And you decide what you want." "What I want? From this. From us. From whatever we're building between coffee and crisis." "I don't know what we're building." "Neither do I," he admitted. "But I'd like to find out, if you're willing." A car pulled up, another black sedan that screamed money and power. 2 men emerged, and Alessio had a brief conversation with them in Italian before returning to me. "They'll stay until this is fully resolved," he explained. "Your father won't be bothered again." "And the payment for this protection?" His expression hardened. "There is no payment. That's not how this works anymore. Hasn't for years in the neighborhoods under our watch. But you maintain control. I maintain stability. The alternative is men like Torino moving in, demanding $5,000 from mechanics who barely break even." He gestured toward the garage. "Is that preferable?" It wasn't, and we both knew it. The ethical complexity of his position, protector and controller, criminal and benefactor, made my head spin. "This is a lot," I said finally. "I know. Take your time, process, make lists. I know how you love lists." His smile was gentle. "But know this. Nothing that happened today changes how I feel about you. If anything, seeing you ready to charge in to protect your father just confirmed what I already knew. Which is that you're extraordinary, and that I'll wait as long as it takes for you to believe it's safe to let me prove it." He moved to leave, then paused. "Your father invited me for dinner Tuesday. Something about teaching me to change brake pads afterward. Should I decline?" The thought of Alessio at our kitchen table, in our world completely rather than just adjacent to it, should have terrified me. Instead, I found myself saying, "He makes excellent lasagna on Tuesdays. Then I'll see you Tuesday." He started toward his car, then turned back. "For what it's worth, today's coffee was perfect, even with the interruption." "Even with your protection racket revealed?" "I prefer Community Stabilization Initiative. That's corporate speak for protection racket." "You would know. You're the analyst." He grinned, and for a moment he was just the man who'd ridden the L badly and admitted to being lost. "Tuesday, then?" "Tuesday." I watched his car disappear into the Chicago afternoon, then returned to the garage where Dad was elbow-deep in an engine. "Nice boy," he said without looking up. "He's 35, Dad, and he runs a criminal empire. Transitioning criminal empire, from what I hear, and he scared off those idiots without violence, cares enough to learn basic car maintenance, and looks at you like you hung the moon." Dad emerged from the engine, wiping his hands on a rag. "Could do worse." "It's complicated. Best things usually are." He studied me with those perceptive eyes. "You like him." The protest died. "Yeah, I do. But you're scared. Terrified." Dad nodded, understanding in his weathered face. Your mom terrified me. Educated, beautiful, could have had anyone. What did she want with a grease monkey from Ashland? Took me months to believe she actually chose me. This is different. Is it? He's from a different world, has more money than God could have anyone. Sound familiar? Mom wasn't running criminal enterprises. No, but her father was a judge. You think he was thrilled when she brought home a mechanic? Dad smiled at the memory. Sometimes, Princess, love doesn't make sense on paper. That's what makes it love, instead of a business arrangement. Nobody said anything about love. No? Then what do you call a man spending $500,000 on your surgery without asking for anything in return? What do you call him learning car maintenance to connect with your father? What do you call the way he looked ready to tear apart anyone who threatened us? Complicated, I repeated weakly. Love usually is. He returned to his engine. Lasagna on Tuesday? Apparently. Good. I'll make extra. Boy's too thin. I laughed despite everything. He owns half the restaurants in Chicago, Dad. And probably eats alone in most of them. Tuesday, he eats with family. Family. The word lodged in my chest, warm and terrifying. But as I settled in to help Dad with the engine, I realized that's what we were becoming. Not through blood or law, but through choice. Through coffee dates that turned into protection. Through surgery bills that became lifelines. Through a man willing to learn about carburetors and a father willing to teach him. It wasn't the life I'd planned. It was messier, more dangerous, more complicated than anything I'd imagined. But as the afternoon sun broke through the clouds, drying the rain and warming the garage, I thought maybe it was the life I was meant to have. Tuesday would come with lasagna and brake pads, and a man trying to be worthy of something I was only beginning to understand I wanted to give. The ledger I'd kept so carefully was becoming irrelevant. You couldn't quantify love, couldn't balance its books. You could only choose it, one careful step at a time. Hand me that wrench, Princess, Dad called. And stop thinking so hard. Some things you gotta feel instead of analyze. He was right, of course. The analysis could come later. For now, there was an engine to fix, a garage to run, and the quiet promise of Tuesday dinners, where 3 different worlds might learn to become one. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't simple. But it was ours. And maybe that was enough.